Ukraine is dealing with the aftermath of what the country's Air Force said was more than 100 drones and 2 ballistic missiles fired overnight by Russia. Ukraine's foreign minister nonetheless noting that Russia's recent announcement that it would begin to hit Kyiv particularly hard from the air hasn't yet been borne out. On Monday, Russia urged all foreign citizens to leave the Ukrainian capital and told residents to steer clear of military and government facilities. Well, for more, we can cross live now to Dnipro in Ukraine to speak with our correspondent there, Gulliver Cragg. Gulliver, Russia continued its deadly strikes on civilians overnight. What more can you tell us?
Yes, in a way, the fact that they continued the regular nightly strikes that are basically their habit over the past few years would suggest that they're not trying to save up for a very, very big extra strike on Kyiv, because they fired, as you said, 2 Iskander missiles and quite a large number of drones. It would have been surprising if they had launched a huge attack on Kyiv so quickly after the last one, which was Saturday night, because they need time to replenish their stocks. Instead, though, various areas closer to the front lines were targeted. At least 2 civilians were killed in Donetsk region, also 2 in Kherson region, and 2 just north of Kharkiv in the town of Derkachi. In terms of long-range strikes further from the front lines, 1 civilian is reported killed in Odessa. There were 14 wounded when something hit an apartment block in the town of Pavlograd to the east of here, where I was this morning actually, and we're just hearing reports coming in that there are at least 12 wounded in an attack on Zaporizhia, the big city to the south of here, just earlier today.
Now, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has warned his US counterpart Marco Rubio of planned strikes on Kyiv's decision-making centres. What reaction have we been hearing from foreign embassies so far, Gulliver?
So the French embassy and the EU embassy, the EU's representation, and other embassies from the European Union were very clear in condemning these threats and saying that they would not give in to those kinds of threats. The French embassy said that it would carry on working as normal. The EU's high representative in Kyiv said that they weren't going anywhere. The United States hasn't, I think, very clearly stated whether they plan to take any measures, extra security measures. I think Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, though, said that for a long time Kyiv has been a dangerous place. China also ambiguous. But I think the feeling is that the Russians don't really have the capacity to increase their targeting of Kyiv by all that much. As I said, they need time to accumulate the drones and missiles that they use. But already the strikes on Saturday night were terrifying. Most people in Kyiv said that it was the most terrifying night of the war so far. And so that, of course, means that civilians are more nervous, knowing that Kyiv is apparently going to be the focus of strikes in the coming days, and not cities like Dnipro, where I am now, for example, which get hit more regularly but perhaps less intensely. The building you can see behind me up there to the right, you can see there's damage there. That happened a week ago, and people here say that kind of low-level damage in Dnipro is par for the course. It's pretty much a daily occurrence. It might be that Kyiv is seeing a bit more of that in the days to come, and so there is some nervousness among civilians, but also the feeling that these are scare tactics from Russia, and the appropriate stance to take is to not give in to them if you can.
And Gulliver, as you said, you are in Dnipro, close, it has to be said, to the front lines. How are the soldiers that you've been speaking to reacting to these latest threats from Russia?
Well, this morning I was with a drone unit, one of whose main tasks is to shoot down Shahed drones that are targeting Pavlograd and Dnipro and other cities in this region. And they say that the interceptor drones that they've got, that they are using, it's been about a year now that they've been using these drones, which are called Sting, are extremely effective in shooting down. So they're getting better at shooting down the drones. And that's generally the situation. Ukraine is getting better at shooting down drones. But for shooting down hypersonic missiles and long-range cruise missiles, it's harder because they don't have enough ammunition, particularly for the Patriot systems made by the Americans, which are basically the only system that can shoot down the absolute fastest missiles that Russia has. And so they're having to pick and choose about that. And these soldiers said that Russia's capacity to send these missiles and drones across, basically Russia's air capacity is increasing, even as Russian soldiers on the front lines are really on the back foot, actually failing to advance, completely failing to make any progress with the touted spring offensive that was somewhat feared and expected, certainly here in Ukraine. So far, the Russians aren't getting anywhere with that.